London, 1858. The annual winter ball at Pembroke House was, as expected, a constellation of England's elite, where the stars of society sparkled against the backdrop of velvet draperies and crystal chandeliers. Yet in the periphery of this glittering universe, Miss Winifred Northcott stood alone, her slate-grey gown as unremarkable as her prospects. At 23, Winifred had long reconciled herself to spinsterhood. With no fortune, mediocre connections, and a quiet disposition that bordered on invisibility, she had spent 3 disappointing seasons watching other girls receive proposals while she collected dust along the ballroom walls. Wine, Miss Northcott. Her aunt, Lady Harrington, appeared at her side with a glass. Do try to look less like you're attending a funeral. Your cousin went to considerable expense to include you in her season. Winifred accepted the wine with a murmur of thanks, knowing full well that her presence was merely a convenience, someone to entertain her cousin's less desirable suitors while the true prize, the vivacious Charlotte, entranced the most eligible bachelors. The Duke of Valmont has arrived, Lady Harrington whispered, her voice tinged with reverence. The murmur rippled through the ballroom like wind through tall grass. Frederick Valmont, the 7th Duke of Valmont, had entered the proceedings. At 32, he was the most sought-after bachelor in London, devastatingly handsome, immeasurably wealthy, and notoriously discerning. Mothers with marriageable daughters straightened imperceptibly, young ladies adjusted their expressions to that perfect blend of modesty and invitation. Winifred allowed herself one glance. The Duke stood in the entrance, tall and commanding in impeccable evening attire, his dark hair contrasting with ice the color of a winter sea. His reputation preceded him, brilliant, exacting, and utterly unimpressed by the parade of débutantes London had to offer. Charlotte will be in raptures, Winifred murmured, turning back to her wine. As well she should be, her aunt replied. Though I doubt the Duke would consider her seriously. The Earl of Westmoreland's son is a much more reasonable aspiration. The orchestra struck up a waltz. Winifred retreated further into her corner, knowing no invitations would be forthcoming. She had learned to find comfort in observation, studying the dance of courtship with the detachment of a naturalist. Her fingers unconsciously reached for the small notebook concealed in her pocket, her secret indulgence. In it, she sketched the characters of society, crafting stories about their lives beyond the ballroom. "Pardon me." The deep voice startled her from her reverie. She looked up to find the Duke of Valmont standing before her, inexplicably addressing her rather than passing by. "Your Grace," she managed, dropping into a curtsy. "I believe this is our dance, Miss Northcott." Confusion flooded her face. I fear there must be some mistake. We have not been introduced, and I certainly did not presume to, no mistake." His expression remained inscrutable. Lady Pembroke was kind enough to make the introduction in absentia. "Shall we?" The ballroom seemed to slow as the Duke of Valmont escorted Winifred Northcott to the floor. She felt the weight of 100 stairs upon her back, heard the whispers rising like steam behind elegant fans. Most bewildering was the Duke himself, his firm hand at her waist, guiding her with confident precision through the steps of the waltz. "You dance well, Miss Northcott," he observed. "Thank you, Your Grace. Though I confess, I am puzzled by your choice of partner." A faint smile crossed his lips. "Are you suggesting I have erred in my selection?" "Not at all. Merely that there are many young ladies present whose company would better enhance Your Grace's evening." "I disagree." His eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "You are the only person in this room who wasn't watching the door when I arrived." She blinked in surprise. "You notice that?" "I notice many things others do not. For instance, the small notebook you carry. Not a dance card, those are typically displayed more prominently. A diary, perhaps." Heat rose to her cheeks. "You are most observant. Necessity, not virtue, Miss Northcott. In my position, one must discern genuine character from performance." His hand tightened slightly at her waist as he guided her through a turn. "You are an enigma, present in society yet detached from it. I assure you, there is nothing enigmatic about me. I am precisely what I appear, a woman of modest means and unremarkable qualities. The Duke's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Self-deprecation is an unattractive quality, Miss Northcott. Almost as unattractive as false modesty. The music drew to a close before she could formulate a response. The Duke bowed formally, then straightened, his voice lowered for her ears alone. "I would speak with you further. Perhaps in Lady Pembroke's conservatory, in 15 minutes' time." Without awaiting her response, he escorted her back to her corner, bowed again, and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Winifred bewildered and surrounded by curious stares. "What," hissed her aunt, appearing at her side, "did the Duke of Valmont say to you?" Winifred's mind raced. The conservatory invitation was surely inappropriate, a fact the Duke must certainly know. To meet him alone would risk her reputation, meagre though it was. He merely commented on the orchestra, she lied. "Excuse me, aunt. I find I need some air." She slipped away before Lady Harrington could protest, moving not toward the conservatory but to a small antechamber where she could collect her thoughts. What game was the Duke playing? Men of his station did not dance with women of her position without purpose, and that purpose was rarely honorable. The door opened behind her. She turned, expecting her aunt, only to find Charlotte's brother, Lord James Harrington, regarding her with a sly expression. "Cousin," he drawled, "how opportune to find you alone. I've been meaning to speak with you about a certain financial arrangement." Winifred stiffened. James had been pressing her to invest her small inheritance, left by her father, in one of his dubious business ventures. "I've told you before, James, I cannot risk my security on speculation." "Risk is relative," he said, stepping closer. "And your position in our household is similarly flexible. Aunt Margaret might be less inclined to extend her charity if she knew of your little literary endeavors." Her blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Your stories, cousin. The ones you sell to that disreputable magazine under a pseudonym. Scandalous tales of aristocratic misbehavior, thinly veiled portraits of our peers." He smiled unpleasantly. "How do you think the Countess of Whitmore would react to discovering she was the model for your lady of loose morals?" Winifred's hands trembled. Her anonymous stories, romantic adventures published in a ladies' weekly, were her only source of independent income, meagre though it was. More importantly, they were her sole creative outlet, her private rebellion against the constraints of her existence. "You wouldn't dare." £500, Winifred. "For my shipping venture. Or your secret becomes the latest on it in every drawing room in London." The door opened again, and the Duke of Valmont stood framed in the entrance, his expression unreadable. "Forgive the interruption," he said smoothly. "I was seeking a moment of quiet." James paled visibly. "Your Grace." "Of course." He bowed hastily. "I was just leaving." When the door closed behind him, Winifred found herself once more alone with the most powerful bachelor in London. "An unpleasant conversation?" the Duke inquired, advancing into the room. "A family matter," she replied stiffly. "Your Grace, I should return to the ballroom." "Yet you avoided the conservatory." His gaze was penetrating. "Wise, perhaps. Though I assure you, my intentions were merely conversational. Conversation can be had in proper settings, with proper chaperonage." "Indeed." He gestured to the open door, through which the ballroom was clearly visible. "We stand in full view of society, Miss Northcott. Your reputation remains intact. Now, will you satisfy my curiosity?" She hesitated. "About what matter? About what literary pursuits have your cousin so concerned?" Her chest tightened. "You overheard. Enough to gather you write something your family would disapprove of. A novel, perhaps? Poetry?" The Duke's apparent interest confused her. Was this some elaborate trap? Why should such matters concern the Duke of Valmont? A flash of something, frustration, perhaps, crossed his face before his composure returned. "Because, Miss Northcott, beneath the tedium of balls and social obligations, I find myself in desperate need of genuine conversation. You observe rather than perform." I find that refreshing." Before she could respond, a commotion arose from the ballroom. Lady Pembroke's voice carried clearly, "The Gazette! Has anyone seen this week's edition?" The blood drained from Winifred's face. The Social Gazette was where her stories were published, under the name The Lady Observer. If James had somehow exposed her. The Duke noticed her distress. "Miss Northcott." "I must go," she whispered, moving toward the door. They re-entered the ballroom to find a cluster of guests surrounding Lady Pembroke, who held the latest edition of the Social Gazette aloft. "It's scandalous," she declared. "This Lady Observer has written the most shocking account of Lord Rutherford's affair with his wife's lady's maid. Every detail is perfectly accurate, the sapphire necklace, the midnight meetings in the library. How could anyone know such things unless they move among us?" Winifred froze. That particular story had been inspired by gossip she'd overheard between two matrons at a literary salon. She had no idea the details were accurate. The Duke's voice came low near her ear. "Interesting coincidence, wouldn't you say?" She met his gaze, finding not accusation but curiosity there. "I should check on my aunt," she murmured, slipping away. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of anxiety. Winifred avoided both the Duke and her cousin James, pleading a headache when her aunt finally agreed to depart. The following morning brought no relief. Lady Harrington burst into the small bedchamber Winifred occupied in their Mayfair townhouse, her expression thunderous. "Explain this." She thrust a letter into Winifred's hands. "The Duke of Valmont has requested permission to call upon you this afternoon." "What did you say to him last night?" Winifred stared at the elegant handwriting in shock. "Nothing of consequence, I assure you." "Nothing of," Lady Harrington sputtered. "The most eligible bachelor in England does not call upon penniless nobodies without reason. If you have somehow entangled him, or worse, if there was any impropriety, aunt." "I am not Charlotte. I know my place. The Duke merely found my conversation diverting, I suppose." Lady Harrington narrowed her eyes. "See, that diversion is all it remains. The Duke is far beyond your reach, and I will not have Charlotte's prospects tainted by association if you develop aspirations." After her aunt departed, Winifred sat motionless, the Duke's letter in her trembling hands. What could he possibly want? The answer came to her suddenly, sending ice through her veins. The timing of his appearance during James's threats, his interest in her writing, his presence when the Gazette was discussed, he had deduced her secret. The Duke of Valmont arrived precisely at the appointed hour. Winifred received him in the drawing-room, under her aunt's hawk-like supervision. "Your Grace," Lady Harrington simpered, "what an unexpected pleasure." "Lady Harrington." He bowed politely before turning his attention to Winifred. "Miss Northcott, I hope you are well after the exertions of last evening." "Quite well, thank you." Lady Harrington interjected, "Charlotte will be devastated to have missed your call. She is attending a musicale with the Pembroke family." "Fortunate, then, that my business is with Miss Northcott." The Duke's tone was pleasant but firm. "I was hoping she might accompany me on a short carriage ride. The weather is fine, and I have a matter of some importance to discuss." Lady Harrington's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "A carriage ride? Alone?" "I hardly think my companion, Mrs. Sheffield, will act as chaperone, of course." He gestured toward the window, where an elegant closed carriage waited, an elderly lady visible within. Lady Harrington could hardly refuse. 20 minutes later, Winifred found herself seated opposite the Duke in his luxurious carriage, the disapproving face of Mrs. Sheffield beside her only mild comfort. "You seem tense, Miss Northcott," the Duke observed once they were underway. "I confess I am puzzled by your attention, Your Grace." Mrs. Sheffield sniffed disapprovingly at such directness. The Duke smiled faintly. "I appreciate frankness." "Very well, I shall be equally direct. I wish to offer you a business proposition." Winifred blinked in surprise. "Business?" "Indeed. I require the services of someone with literary talent and observational skills." Someone who can move in society while remaining, shall we say, beneath particular notice. Her pulse quickened. You know that you are the Lady Observer? Yes. Your cousin's threat confirmed what I had already suspected from your writing style. The latest piece about Lord Rutherford was particularly inspired. The details about his distinctive pocket watch and habit of tugging his left ear when lying, masterful touches. Mrs. Sheffield gasped. Your Grace! Such matters are hardly, Mrs. Sheffield, would you be so kind as to allow Miss Northcott and me a moment of private conversation? Perhaps admire the park scenery for a few minutes. The companion huffed but turned deliberately to stare out the window, though Winifred had no doubt she was straining to hear every word. What exactly are you proposing, Your Grace? Winifred asked quietly. I require information about a certain Lord Palliser. He is courting my younger sister, and I have concerns about his character and finances. Your talent for observation and documentation would be invaluable. She frowned. You wish me to spy on a gentleman? Surely you have more conventional means at your disposal. Conventional means have yielded conventional information. I need someone who sees what others miss. His eyes held hers. I would compensate you generously. And if I refuse? Then we return to your aunt's home, and I trouble you no further. He paused. Though I suspect your cousin's financial demands will not be so easily dismissed. The implication was clear, he offered a solution to her predicament. Yet something about the arrangement felt wrong. Why would the Duke of Valmont need my assistance? You could hire professional investigators. A shadow crossed his face. My sister has accused me of interfering in her previous attachments. If she discovered I had set investigators upon Lord Palliser, our relationship, already strained, would suffer irreparably. So instead you would have me deceive her? Infiltrate her social circle under false pretenses? Not false pretenses. You would be exactly who you are, a genteel lady of limited means but excellent breeding. My sister, Lady Sophia, enjoys patronizing worthy cases. I would simply ensure you were introduced as such. The carriage slowed as they completed a circuit of the park. Winifred's mind raced with the implications of his offer. The money would solve her immediate problems with James, but at what cost to her integrity? I need time to consider, she said finally. Of course. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small card. My direction, should you wish to communicate your decision. I require an answer within 3 days. As the carriage returned her to Harrington House, Winifred felt the weight of the Duke's card in her pocket, a small rectangle of possibility and peril. The following morning brought an unexpected visitor. Lady Sophia Valmont, the Duke's sister, arrived unannounced at Harrington House. Miss Northcott, she inquired when Winifred entered the drawing-room. I am Lady Sophia Valmont. Forgive the intrusion, but I was passing and recalled my brother mentioning you. May we speak privately? Lady Harrington, hovering nearby, practically pushed Winifred forward. Of course. I was just leaving to attend to household matters. Once alone, Lady Sophia's pleasant expression hardened. Let us dispense with pretense, Miss Northcott. What are your intentions regarding my brother? I beg your pardon. Frederick has never shown interest in a lady of your position. Yet he called upon you yesterday and took you driving. Society talks, Miss Northcott, and I protect my family's interests. Winifred stared at the beautiful young woman before her. At perhaps 20 years of age, Lady Sophia displayed the confident hauteur of her aristocratic upbringing. I assure you, Lady Sophia, I have no designs on your brother. Then why his sudden interest? Winifred hesitated. If the Duke had not confided in his sister about his suspicions regarding Lord Palliser, it was not her place to do so. His Grace was kind enough to offer assistance with a family matter. Nothing more. Lady Sophia's eyes narrowed. Assistance? Financial, perhaps? How convenient for you. You misunderstand. No, Miss Northcott, I understand perfectly. My brother may be brilliant in matters of business and estate management, but he has a regrettable tendency toward charity cases. She rose gracefully. I advise you to decline whatever arrangement he has proposed. The Duke of Valmont requires a suitable duchess, not a project. After Lady Sophia's departure, Winifred retreated to her room, her emotions in turmoil. The young woman's assumption that she harbored matrimonial ambitions was laughable, yet her dismissal stung nonetheless. More troubling was the realization that the Duke's proposal placed her in an impossible position. If she accepted, she would be deceiving Lady Sophia while investigating the man she loved. If she refused, she faced James's threats and continued financial insecurity. That evening, she penned 2 letters. The first to the Duke, accepting his proposal with conditions. The second to her editor at the Social Gazette, announcing her retirement as the Lady Observer. The Duke's response arrived the following morning, a brief note confirming her appointment as companion to his elderly aunt, Lady Millicent Valmont, a position that would place her naturally in his sister's social circle. The generous quarterly salary mentioned caused Winifred's eyes to widen. 1 week later, Winifred found herself installed in the Dowager Lady Valmont's elegant townhouse in Berkeley Square. The elderly lady was sharp-minded but physically frail, requiring a companion to read to her, assist with correspondence, and occasionally accompany her on social calls. My nephew says you have a gift for observation, Lady Millicent remarked on Winifred's first evening. I find that promising. Most companions are dreadfully dull. I hope not to disappoint, my lady. The old woman's eyes twinkled. Frederick rarely misjudges character. An unfortunate quality in a man who must eventually marry. He sees through the simpering débutantes their mothers parade before him. Winifred felt a strange discomfort at the mention of the Duke's matrimonial prospects. His Grace seems quite capable of managing his affairs. Too capable, Lady Millicent sniffed. 32 years old and still unmarried because no lady meets his exacting standards. Meanwhile, Sophia runs wild with fortune-hunting rogues like this Palliser fellow. Winifred's attention sharpened. You disapprove of Lord Palliser? Of course I do. Handsome as sin and twice as dangerous. Old gambling debts, a questionable duel in his past, and far too eager to secure a wealthy bride. She fixed Winifred with a penetrating stare. But you didn't hear that from me. Over the following weeks, Winifred settled into a routine. Mornings were spent assisting Lady Millicent, afternoons often involved social calls where she was introduced as my indispensable Miss Northcott. Through these connections, she gradually gained entree to Lady Sophia's circle, observing Lord Palliser from a discreet distance. He was, as Lady Millicent had suggested, extraordinarily handsome, golden-haired and charming, with a ready compliment for every lady. Yet Winifred noted concerning patterns, the way he tensed when certain gentlemen entered a room, his excessive attention to the wealthiest débutantes, the calculating look that occasionally slipped through his amiable facade. She documented her observations in detailed letters to the Duke, delivered through Lady Millicent's trusted footman. His responses were brief but encouraging, occasionally requesting specific information about Palliser's associations or finances. What Winifred had not anticipated was Lady Sophia's growing antagonism. The young woman clearly resented her presence in any gathering where Lord Palliser was present, going so far as to publicly question Winifred's background at a music-hall. Tell me, Miss Northcott, how does a lady of such obscure origins come to be companion to my aunt? Your family is hardly notable in society. The assembled company fell silent at this breach of etiquette. Winifred felt her cheeks burn but maintained her composure. Not all value derives from notable connections, Lady Sophia. Some find merit in education and character. Lord Palliser, standing nearby, offered an oily smile. Well said, Miss Northcott. Lady Sophia, you mustn't tease the poor lady. Not everyone can boast your illustrious lineage and substantial dowry. The calculating gleam in his eye as he emphasized the word dowry confirmed Winifred's worst suspicions. That evening, she wrote her most urgent letter yet to the Duke, detailing Palliser's thinly veiled mercenary intentions. The Duke responded by requesting a meeting the following day at Lady Millicent's townhouse. When he arrived, Winifred was struck by his haggard appearance, as if he had not slept. "Your Grace," she greeted him in Lady Millicent's drawing-room, the elderly lady having tactfully excused herself. "Miss Northcott." He paced before the fireplace. "Your latest report is most disturbing. You are certain of Palliser's intentions?" "As certain as observation allows. He speaks of love to Lady Sophia but discusses her fortune with his associates. Yesterday, I overheard him reassuring a man, presumably a creditor, that his impending nuptials would resolve all financial matters." The Duke's expression darkened. "Sophia will not listen to reason. She accuses me of trying to control her life, of being cold and unfeeling." He stopped pacing suddenly, fixing Winifred with an intense gaze. "She trusts you." Winifred blinked in surprise. "Lady Sophia has made her dislike for me quite clear. Yet she confides in you. My aunt tells me Sophia has spoken to you about her feelings for Palliser." It was true. Despite her public disdain, Lady Sophia had, on several occasions, sought Winifred's advice on matters of the heart, perhaps valuing the perspective of someone she considered beneath her socially. "She believes herself in love," Winifred admitted. "And she values his attention precisely because you disapprove. Then we must show her the truth in a way she cannot dismiss." The Duke moved closer, his voice urgent. "I have obtained proof of Palliser's debts and disreputable associations, but Sophia would never accept such evidence from me." Understanding dawned. "You wish me to present it to her?" "Yes. As a concerned friend, not my agent." He held her gaze. "I realize this goes beyond our original arrangement. I would not ask if the situation were not desperate. Palliser intends to propose at the Wintertons' ball tomorrow night." Winifred felt the weight of responsibility settle upon her shoulders. If she revealed her true role to Lady Sophia, the young woman would feel betrayed and might reject the evidence out of spite. Yet to continue the deception seemed equally wrong. "I will speak with her," she said finally. "But I must do so honestly. Lady Sophia deserves to know I have been in your employ." The Duke's expression tightened. "That would undermine everything." "Perhaps. Or perhaps honesty will lend credibility to the evidence." She met his gaze steadily. "I cannot build truth upon a foundation of lies." For a long moment, he studied her, his expression inscrutable. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. But allow me to be present when you speak with her. If she reacts badly, the blame should fall on me, not you." The Wintertons' ball the following evening was a glittering affair. Winifred attended as Lady Millicent's companion, her simple blue gown a stark contrast to the elaborate silks and satins around her. Lady Sophia arrived on Lord Palliser's arm, resplendent in pale pink that heightened her youthful beauty. The calculating triumph in Palliser's eyes as he escorted her through the ballroom confirmed his intentions for the evening. Winifred had arranged to meet the Duke and Lady Sophia in the Wintertons' library at 11 o'clock. As the appointed time approached, her anxiety mounted. She slipped away from Lady Millicent's side and made her way to the designated meeting place. The Duke was already waiting, tension evident in his rigid posture. "Your Grace," she greeted him quietly. "Miss Northcott." He handed her a folder. The evidence. Letters from creditors, gambling vouchers, testimony from a young lady he compromised and abandoned in Sussex last year. Damning in total. She accepted it with a heavy heart. "And if she refuses to believe it, then at least we will have tried." He moved closer, his voice softening. "Whatever happens, I want you to know your service has been invaluable. Your insights, your compassion." He broke off as the door opened. Lady Sophia entered, her expression darkening at the sight of them together. "Frederick." "Miss Northcott. What is this urgent matter that requires me to abandon my escort?" Winifred stepped forward. "Lady Sophia, before we discuss anything else, I must confess something. I have not been entirely forthcoming about my position in your aunt's household." The young woman's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "Your brother engaged me to observe Lord Palliser." He had concerns about the gentleman's character and intentions. Lady Sophia's face flushed with anger. You were spying on me? On Gerald? Frederick, how could you? The Duke remained calm. I sought to protect you from a fortune hunter. By employing a spy? By having this nobody infiltrate my social circle. She turned on Winifred. And you agreed to this deception? Was our friendship part of your observations as well? Winifred felt the sting of her words but held firm. I accepted your brother's offer because I needed the position. But my concern for you is genuine. Lord Palliser is not what he seems. Spare me your concern, Lady Sophia spat. Gerald warned me you might try something like this. He said Frederick would never accept anyone I chose. Sophia, the Duke interjected, at least examine the evidence before dismissing it. Evidence? Manufactured, no doubt. She moved toward the door. Gerald is waiting to announce our engagement. Nothing you say will change my mind. As she reached for the door handle, it turned from the other side. Lord Palliser himself entered, his handsome face set in an expression of concern. Darling, I've been looking everywhere for. He stopped abruptly at the sight of the Duke and Winifred. What's this? A family council. Lady Sophia rushed to his side. Gerald, they're trying to prevent our happiness. Frederick hired Miss Northcott to spy on you. Palliser's expression shifted from surprise to calculated outrage. Is this true, Valmont? You set a spy upon me. The Duke's voice was ice. I sought information about a man pursuing my sister and her fortune. Information that proved most illuminating. Palliser's eyes darted to the folder in Winifred's hands. What lies have you collected, Miss Northcott? What price did His Grace pay for your services? Before Winifred could respond, another figure appeared in the doorway, her cousin James, clearly intoxicated and dishevelled. Palliser, he slurred. There you are, you blackguard. Where's my money? The room froze in tableau. James staggered forward, oblivious to the tension. £500 you owe me from Tuesday's game. You said you'd pay tonight, once you'd secured your engagement. Lord Palliser's face drained of colour. Harrington, you fool. This is hardly the time. I've given you time enough. James lurched toward him. My creditors won't wait because you're courting some Duke's sister. Pay me what you owe. Lady Sophia stepped back, confusion replacing anger. Gerald? What is he talking about? Nothing, my dear. Just a misunderstanding. Palliser attempted to regain his composure. Harrington is drunk and confused. Confused? James gave a bitter laugh. About the 500 you lost at Faro? Or about your plan to pay your debts with the Valmont fortune once you'd secured her hand? The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Lady Sophia's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. Is it true? She whispered. Palliser's charming facade cracked. Sophia, darling, every man has financial concerns. My feelings for you are genuine, whatever else might. Stop. The Duke's command cut through the room. James Harrington, I suggest you depart before you further embarrass yourself. Palliser, you will sign this. He produced a document from his coat. A pledge never to approach my sister again, in exchange for which your most pressing debts will be settled. Palliser's eyes narrowed with calculation. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow, every club in London will receive notice of your unpaid gambling debts, and every drawing room will hear of the young lady in Sussex. For a moment, defiance flashed in Palliser's eyes, then resignation. He snatched the paper, scrawled his signature, and departed without another word to Lady Sophia. James, suddenly aware of his role in the drama, backed toward the door. Cousin, he muttered to Winifred, no hard feelings about our little disagreement, I hope. She regarded him coldly. None whatsoever, James. Though I suggest you seek your fortune elsewhere from now on. When both men had gone, Lady Sophia collapsed into tears. The Duke moved to comfort her, but she shrank from his touch. "Leave me be," she sobbed. "You were right. Are you satisfied?" "Sophia," he said gently, "I took no pleasure in this. I only sought to protect you." "By hiring someone to deceive me? To pretend friendship while reporting my every word to you?" She turned accusingly to Winifred. "Was anything between us genuine?" Winifred stepped forward, her heart heavy. "Everything except my initial reason for being in your aunt's household. My concern for you was real, as was my growing unease with Lord Palliser's attentions." Lady Sophia wiped her eyes, her expression hardening. "It doesn't matter now. He never loved me. None of it was real." "Not all love is false," Winifred said softly. "And better to discover his true nature now than after marriage." "Easy for you to say." Sophia's voice turned bitter. "You've never been made a fool by love." The Duke interrupted gently. "Sophia, allow me to escort you home. We need not return to the ballroom." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded, her proud bearing returning despite her tear-stained face. At the door, she paused and looked back at Winifred. "I suppose I should thank you," she said stiffly. "But I find I cannot. Good night, Miss Northcott." Left alone in the library, Winifred felt the weight of the evening settle upon her. She had helped prevent a disastrous match, yet at the cost of Lady Sophia's trust and her own sense of integrity. The Duke's position had been justified, but their methods left a bitter taste. She gathered the scattered papers with their damning evidence of Palliser's character and placed them back in the folder. As she did so, a smaller envelope fell to the floor. Picking it up, she found it was addressed to her in the Duke's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a bank draft for £1,000, double the agreed-upon payment for her services, and a brief note, "Miss Northcott. Regardless of tonight's outcome, please accept this as compensation for your invaluable assistance. Your position with Lady Millicent remains secure for as long as you wish it. With deepest gratitude. Valmont." The generosity of the sum, enough to secure her independence for years, should have brought joy. Instead, Winifred felt hollow. She had allowed financial necessity to compromise her principles, becoming a paid deceiver rather than the honest observer she had prided herself on being. She slipped the bank draft and note into her pocket and left the library, intending to make her excuses to Lady Millicent and return to Berkeley Square alone. As she crossed the grand hallway, a familiar voice stopped her. "Miss Northcott." The Duke stood at the foot of the stairs, having apparently returned after settling Lady Sophia in their carriage. "Your Grace." She curtsied formally. "I was just leaving." "Without a proper farewell? That seems unlike you. I found your generous compensation." She kept her voice neutral. "Thank you. It will resolve my financial concerns admirably." He stepped closer, studying her face. "Yet you seem displeased." "Not displeased. Merely reflective." She met his gaze directly. "We achieved your aim. Lady Sophia is saved from an unworthy match. But at what cost to her trust? To my principles. You preferred honesty from the beginning," he acknowledged. "I should have heeded your counsel. It matters little now. The deception is done." The Duke was silent for a moment, then spoke with unusual hesitation. "Will you remain in my aunt's household? I have grown fond of Lady Millicent. If she still desires my companionship, yes." "And what of your writing? Will that Lady Observer return to the Social Gazette?" Winifred shook her head. "I think not. That chapter of my life is closed." "A pity. Your observations were remarkably insightful." He paused. "Perhaps your talents might be directed toward fiction instead? Novels, perhaps." The suggestion surprised her. "You believe I have such ability? I believe you have extraordinary understanding of human nature, combined with your literary skill." He trailed off, then continued in a more formal tone. My publishing house, Valmont Literary Editions, would be interested in reviewing any manuscripts you might produce. Winifred stared at him, trying to decipher his intent. You own a publishing house. Among other ventures. Books have always been a particular passion. For the first time that evening, a genuine smile softened his features. Consider it, Miss Northcott. Your observations deserve a wider audience than the gossip columns. Before she could respond, Lady Millicent's companion came searching for her, and the moment passed. The days following the Wintertons' ball were quiet ones at Berkeley Square. Lady Sophia had retreated to the Valmont country estate in Derbyshire, while the Duke immersed himself in business affairs. Lady Millicent, recovering from a mild cold, kept mostly to her rooms, leaving Winifred with unusual freedom. She used the time to begin a novel, a story of societal constraints and hidden identities that had long been forming in her mind. The work proved absorbing, and for the first time in years, she wrote for the joy of creation rather than financial necessity. 2 weeks after the ball, as spring began to soften London's sharp edges, the Duke called at Lady Millicent's townhouse. Winifred received him in the drawing-room, conscious of the elderly lady's curious gaze upon them both. Your Grace, she greeted him. Lady Millicent is much improved today. Excellent news. He bowed to his aunt before turning back to Winifred. However, I came primarily to speak with you, Miss Northcott. On a matter of business. Lady Millicent snorted. Business, indeed. Well, don't mind me. My hearing is conveniently poor when required. The Duke's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. Nevertheless, perhaps Miss Northcott might accompany me to the garden? The spring blooms are particularly fine this year. In the small but exquisitely maintained garden behind the townhouse, they walked in silence for several moments before the Duke spoke. I received a letter from Sophia yesterday. She has asked me to convey her apologies to you. Winifred looked up in surprise. To me? Yes. She writes that reflection has brought understanding of your position and appreciation for your attempt at honesty. He hesitated. She also asked if you might correspond with her. It seems she misses your conversations. Of course, Winifred said warmly. I would be delighted. They continued walking, the Duke seemingly preoccupied with his thoughts. There was another purpose to my visit, he said eventually. My editor at Valmont Editions mentioned you had submitted several chapters of a novel. Winifred felt her cheeks warm. Yes. You had suggested, that is, I thought perhaps, they are excellent. The direct praise caught her off guard. Truly, Miss Northcott. Your voice is distinct, your characters compelling. The editor wishes to offer you a contract for the completed work, with an advance of £200. Joy surged through her. A contract? Truly? Truly? His smile was genuine. Though I must confess a personal interest in seeing your work published. I have rarely encountered such insight on the page. They had stopped walking, facing each other beside a blooming rose bush. Winifred studied his face, finding an unfamiliar softness in his usually composed features. Your Grace, may I ask a personal question? Frederick, he said unexpectedly. After all we have experienced together, I think you might call me Frederick, at least in private. The intimacy of the suggestion startled her. I hardly think that would be appropriate. Appropriate. He seemed to test the word. A useful concept for maintaining social order, yet often the enemy of honesty. What was your question, Miss Northcott? She gathered her courage. Why did you dance with me that night at the winter ball? The truth, please. Was it because you had already identified me as the lady observer? He considered her for a long moment. No. That suspicion came later. Then why? Of all the ladies present, why choose the forgotten Wallflower? Because you were watching the dancers, not me. His voice softened. Every other young lady in that room was calculating how to attract my attention. You alone seemed content in your observations, requiring nothing from me. I found that irresistible. The confession hung between them, more intimate than any touch. Winifred felt a dangerous warmth spreading through her chest. "Your Grace, Frederick, I think we should return inside." "In a moment." He stepped closer. "There is something else I must tell you. Something I have been contemplating since the night we met." Alarm mingled with an unnamed anticipation. "If this concerns my position with Lady Millicent, it does not." He took her hand, his touch sending a current through her arm. "Winifred, if I may, I find myself in the unprecedented position of having met a woman whose mind captivates me completely, whose principles challenge my own, whose company I seek above all others." She stared at him, scarcely breathing. "What are you saying?" "I believe I am attempting, rather inelegantly, to express deeper feelings than mere admiration." His eyes held hers. "Feelings that have grown despite differences in our stations, or perhaps because of them." Winifred withdrew her hand, stepping back. "Your Grace, if this is some kind of jest, it is not." His expression was solemn. "I realize this must seem sudden, even inappropriate. Society would certainly view it as such. But I have never been governed by society's expectations when they conflict with deeper truths." "And what truth is this?" "That I love you, Winifred Northcott. Not for your family connections or your fortune, but for your mind, your integrity, your courage." He smiled ruefully. "Even when that courage leads you to challenge me." Winifred felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. The Duke of Valmont, the most eligible bachelor in London, was declaring love for her? Impossible. "This cannot be," she whispered. "You require a suitable duchess. Someone who understands your world." "I require a partner who understands me." He reached for her hand again, and this time she did not pull away. "Someone who sees beyond the title to the man beneath. As you have always done." "Frederick," she began, his given name strange yet right upon her lips, "even if what you say is true, consider the consequences. Your family, your position in society, my family already adores you." "As for society," he shrugged. "Let them talk. They will regardless." A laugh escaped her, part disbelief, part joy. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. Difficult, perhaps, but simple in its essence." He brought her hand to his lips. "I love you. If you can find it in your heart to love me in return, nothing else signifies." In that moment, with spring blooming around them and truth finally spoken, Winifred recognized the feeling that had been growing in her own heart, the warmth that spread through her whenever the Duke appeared, the comfort she found in his company, the admiration for his mind and principles. "I do love you," she said softly. "Though I scarcely dared acknowledge it, even to myself." His face transformed with joy. Drawing her closer, he bent his head, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that promised a lifetime of understanding and passion. When they parted, breathless, Frederick smiled. "I believe my aunt is watching us from the window." Winifred glanced up to see Lady Millicent hastily retreating from view. "She will be insufferable with triumph." "Undoubtedly." He laughed, then grew serious once more. "Winifred Northcott, will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? My duchess, yes, but more importantly, my companion, my confidant, my heart's true match." "Yes," she said simply. "With all my heart, yes." As they walked back toward the house, hand in hand, Winifred reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. From forgotten wallflower to beloved of a duke, a transformation no one could have predicted that winter night when she stood alone against the ballroom wall, observing a world she never expected to join. Yet here she was, stepping into a new story, one she would write herself, with the man who had seen her truly when everyone else had overlooked her presence. The forgotten wallflower had found her place, not pressed between the pages of someone else's life, but blooming fully in the garden of her own creation.